For more resources, visit rym.org.
One, two, 3.
The Local Youth Worker is a daily podcast that's centered on 5 questions each week. Ranging from the practical to the professional, we're looking for answers to the questions you're asking. Whether you're in full-time, part-time, or even volunteer youth ministry, this podcast is for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Local Youth Worker, a daily podcast brought to you by Reformed Youth Ministries. I'm your host, John Parrott. All this week, we'll be speaking with Dr. J. Ligon Duncan III. Dr. Duncan, welcome.
It's good to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Duncan is the Chancellor and CEO of Reformed Theological Seminary and the John E. Richards Professor of Systematic and Historical Theology. He served as Senior Minister of First Presbyterian Church in Jackson, Mississippi for 17 years. He is co-founder of Together for the Gospel, Senior Fellow of the Council on Biblical Manhood and Womanhood, having served as both Chairman of the Board and President. He was President of the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals from 2004 to 2012. Dr. Duncan served as the moderator of the General Assembly for the Presbyterian Church in America from 2004 to 2005. He has edited, written, and contributed to numerous books. Dr. Duncan and his wife, Ann, have 2 children in college, and they reside in Jackson, Mississippi. That's quite a bio, and I left some out, too. So, Dr. Duncan, I know you're a man with a lot on your plate, so it means a lot that you would take the time to come on this show. So without further ado, let's get to the first question. Are you ready?
Yeah, fire away.
All right. So prior to becoming Chancellor and CEO at Reformed Theological Seminary, you were, as I stated in the bio, Senior Pastor at the historic First Presbyterian Church in Jackson, Mississippi. So thinking back to your role as Senior Pastor, what 3 pieces of advice would you give to those serving in youth ministry? If a youth worker came knocking on your door and said, where do I begin in this role of youth ministry? What would you say to them?
Well, John, my first official responsibility in ministry was as I was a youth minister. And so I've got a real heart for those who serve students and their families. And I loved that job. I really did. And consequently, I've always been very interested in youth staff. And let me just say, as a pastor of a sort of a big steeple Southeastern Presbyterian church, and I think this would be true of Baptist churches, Methodist churches, congregational churches, etc. in the Southeast. There's probably no harder job on the staff than whatever you call it, a director of student ministries or a director of youth ministries or a minister to students and families. It's designed and called different things, but that's a hard job. And parents in our part of the culture, and I know you know this because you ministered exactly where I ministered for so long, have some high expectations of people in youth ministry, and sometimes unrealistic and unreasonable expectations of them. And so there'd be several things I would say. I mean, one is I would encourage youth staff to have a good, close relationship with their senior minister. Just have a friendship and view one another as, brothers in arms, colleagues in the battle, doing different parts of the job. And I can tell you, over my 17 years at First Pres, the happiest times were when things were really going well in student ministry. People, very frankly, unless I get up and spout heresy on Sunday mornings, I'm not under the gun unless things are going wrong in student ministry, because there's nothing that parents care about more than their kids. Mm-hmm. And so I gave that speech to every person on youth staff that ever came on, not to burden them with it's not their job to make the church go, but to indicate to them, I didn't consider it some sort of third class job. This is not some sort of flunky job in the context of kingdom work. It's really important work. And so that's one thing that I would say. I mean, the other thing is, and this is harder to do, student workers who are really good relationally, connect with the kids, are involved in their lives, teach the word well, try and cultivate spiritual fruit in their ministry, can sometimes neglect the relationship with the parents of the kids. And not everybody's great at both sides of that job. I bet you've seen youth staff that are great with the kids and not so great with the parents, and then some that are great with the parents and not so great with the kids. So, but I would say don't neglect the parents, because ultimately none of us in ministry can replace parents. And we don't want to. What we want to do is we want to extend the spiritual influence of the parents in the lives of their kids. And we want to supplement what parents are doing in terms of cultivating godliness through our youth ministry. And of course, ultimately, we want to point people to the ordinary means of grace and the most important hours in the week for youth ministry, or when the church is worshiping and under the word and prayer and sacrament with the whole congregation. But the youth staff can supplement and sort of drive deeply into the hearts things that students are getting from their parents and from the pulpit. And that's the next thing I would say. And then beyond that is just the friendship, the power of friendship and example. I think that student workers sometimes don't realize that maybe the most significant thing they have going is the ability to connect with a student and then show that student a person who loves God more than anything else, trusts in Christ, believes the gospel, believes the Bible, thinks it's important, and is still a normal person. And that's hugely impactful on youth. And a lot of times you feel frustrated. Student ministry is tough work because you don't see the fruits of that sometimes for years and years and years. But don't downplay the importance of your own character and example.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of helpful information and a lot of good things for us to hear, good things for us to think about. Kind of a follow up as I'm thinking back to your first one, developing a relationship with the senior pastor. But what kind of encouragement or counsel would you give to those youth workers who do want to pursue that relationship with the senior pastor, but maybe the senior pastor doesn't reciprocate that? And some of it is, not faulting the senior pastor. Obviously, there are different sized congregations, and the senior pastor has so many things on his plate, so he might not have the time. So what advice would you give there? You're exactly right, John. And every, senior pastors are all different stripes. I think a lot of people think that all senior pastors are extroverts, and they're not. You can have a 3,000 member congregation and be an extreme introvert. And that can play out in staff relations where it's not that you're unfriendly. It's not that, you don't care about people. It's just that you're introverted and your inclination is to hole up in your office and read a book, or you're so overwhelmed by the people that you're ministering to that you're looking for solitude. So that youth staff are going to have to watch that, just like we watch that in every other relationship on church staffs. But I tell you, a lot of times with a senior pastor, and this was certainly the case with me, sometimes I didn't want to force myself on somebody. If they didn't want a relationship, I didn't want to pressure them into having to be my buddy or whatever else. So what I tried to do is I tried to take out staff, go out to lunch, go out for coffee, sort of roll through the whole list of my ministry staff and get to know them. But I typically responded to the people that wanted the most attention. It was real easy for me to give them attention back. And so at least take those first couple of steps and try and get to know your senior pastor. And look, if your senior pastor is an introvert and doesn't reciprocate, don't decide that he's a horrible person and that he's bad, etc. He's just different, And there may be other people. There may be elders in the church, or there may be other church staff. As long as we're all pulling in the same direction and we're loyal to one another, not everybody has to be the same friendship level on every church staff. As long as we're all on the same team together and supporting one another in ministry.
But I definitely, over the years, when youth staff reached out to me and indicated, "Hey, I'd like a relationship with you," that was real motivating to me. I mean, I liked that opportunity to go out and shoot the breeze and talk and download and look. Let me say, I found out a lot about things that I needed to give attention to in terms of pastoral care from my youth staff, because young people will tell youth staff things that they will not tell their parents, and that senior staff don't know. And so I found out about a lot of marital problems from my youth staff because the kids talk with them about it. And I found out other pastoral issues that was super important. So I was thankful that those youth staff reached out to me, had that relationship where they could say, "Hey, I'm running into a problem that I don't know how to handle. Can you give me some advice?" Or, "Hey, just a heads up, so and so, I think they're having marital problems, and you may want to check on them." And that's one of the many benefits that I got out of youth staff that were willing to sort of reach out to me and say, "Hey, I'd like to get to know you better and spend a little time with you."
That's some great perspective there, and really, I mean, as you said, helping us see, some senior pastors are indeed introverts. I mean, John Piper has kind of been one of those that's been outspoken of being such an introvert. And I remember hearing that for the first time and just being shocked by that. But that is so true, and encouraging the youth workers to take some initiative and to pursue the senior pastor and to try to get time with them. I think, that's just some helpful advice for sure. So thanks so much for that.
Absolutely.